It is not difficult to discern that our time stands at the threshold of profound change, a moment of birth and transition into a new epoch. The Spirit, as the ever-unfolding reality of thought and being, has broken decisively with the world of its previous existence and representation. The structures, values, and ideas that once defined its reality no longer hold sway over its consciousness. They have been rendered obsolete by the inexorable progression of the Spirit itself. What was once the foundation of its understanding has now become a shell, a vestige of an earlier stage that no longer satisfies its need for truth. The Spirit, having outgrown these forms, is poised to cast them into the past, engaging with the arduous but necessary labor of their transformation. This process is not one of mere rejection or destruction, but of renewal and reconfiguration. The Spirit does not simply discard its previous world, but works through it, preserving what is essential while transcending its limitations. This is not a smooth or painless transition, but a dialectical movement, marked by tension and contradiction. The old and the new coexist uneasily, as the forms of the past resist their dissolution, even as the Spirit presses forward into uncharted territory. This labor of transformation is the essence of Spirit's progression, the means by which it realizes itself anew and brings forth the structures that will define the next stage of its development. Admittedly, the Spirit is never at rest. Its nature is not static but dynamic, a continuous process of becoming. It moves forward through the tension between what is and what must be, propelled by the contradictions and inadequacies of its current state. Each stage of its development, though it may appear complete in itself, reveals its limitations over time, giving rise to the necessity of change. This progression is not arbitrary, but guided by the inner logic of the Spirit itself, which seeks to reconcile its contradictions and achieve ever higher levels of unity and self-awareness. The present moment, then, is not an isolated event, but part of the Spirit's ongoing journey. It is a turning point, a moment of rupture and renewal that reflects the deeper movement of history and thought. The Spirit's break with its previous world signals the exhaustion of that world's capacity to express truth and its inability to satisfy the Spirit's expanding needs. What was once sufficient now appears inadequate, and the Spirit, in its restless pursuit of truth, is compelled to move beyond it. This compulsion is not imposed from without, but arises from within, from the Spirit's own nature as a self-developing totality. In this transition, the labor of transformation is both necessary and inevitable. The Spirit cannot remain confined to the forms of the past, for its essence lies in its progression. Yet this labor is not without struggle, as it demands the dismantling of familiar structures and the creation of new ones. It is a process of destruction and creation, of loss and renewal, through which the Spirit redefines itself and its world. This labor is the hallmark of birth, the painful but transformative emergence of something new, something that carries forward the legacy of the past while transcending its limitations. The recognition of our time as a moment of transition invites us to reflect on our role within this unfolding. The labor of the Spirit is not an abstract or impersonal process. It is carried out through the actions, thoughts, and struggles of individuals and communities. To participate in this labor is to engage with the contradictions of the present, to confront the inadequacies of the old, while working toward the realization of the new. It is to embrace the Spirit's restless progression, not as a source of anxiety, but as a sign of its vitality and the promise of its future. Thus, the Spirit's break with its previous world is not the end, but the beginning of a new chapter in its journey. It reminds us that the restlessness of the spirit, its continuous striving and transformation, is not a flaw, but the very essence of its being. In this moment of birth and transition, we witness the power of the spirit to transcend itself, to overcome the limitations of the past, and to move ever closer to the truth that it seeks. Yet, just as with the birth of a child, where the first breath disrupts the gradual, almost imperceptible process of quiet nourishment in the womb, marking a sudden and qualitative leap into a new mode of existence, so too does the forming spirit transition into its next stage. The spirit, like the maturing child, develops slowly and quietly, preparing itself for transformation. It works patiently toward its new shape, growing within the confines of its current structures until they can no longer contain it. This process, while deliberate and measured, is not without tension, for the spirit's burgeoning maturity inevitably strains against the limitations of its preceding world. The transformation of the spirit does not occur abruptly or without warning. Piece by piece, it dismantles the structure of the world it once inhabited, breaking down the forms and ideas that no longer serve its evolving needs. This dismantling is not a conscious act of destruction, but an organic process driven by the inadequacies and contradictions that emerge within the existing order. The world that once appeared stable and self-sufficient begins to reveal its instability, not in overt or catastrophic events, but through subtle, scattered symptoms that hint at its impending dissolution. These symptoms take many forms, some almost imperceptible at first. Frivolity creeps into the existing order as people begin to treat its institutions, traditions, and values with a casual indifference. What was once regarded as sacred or essential becomes trivialized, no longer commanding the same respect or seriousness. Boredom, too, seeps into the fabric of life, reflecting a growing dissatisfaction with the limitations of the current world. This boredom is not mere restlessness, but a profound sense of disconnection, a recognition, however faint, that the spirit has outgrown its present circumstances. Accompanying these signs is a vague premonition of an unknown future. This premonition is neither fully articulated nor understood. It exists as a feeling, a quiet awareness that the current order is no longer sufficient and that something different lies on the horizon. This sense of the future, though undefined, exerts a subtle pressure on the spirit, drawing it forward and preparing it for the leap into its new shape. It is a harbinger of transformation, signaling that the world as it is will soon give way to something else. This process mirrors the birth of the child, where the quiet nourishment of the womb gives way to the dramatic rupture of birth. The first breath marks a decisive break, a qualitative leap from one mode of existence to another. Similarly, the spirit's transition to a new shape involves not only gradual maturation, but also moments of rupture, where the continuity of its development is punctuated by a sudden reconfiguration. These moments are both the culmination of its slow and steady growth and the beginning of a new stage in its journey. The signs of this transition, the frivolity, boredom, and premonition, may seem like minor disruptions, but they are profound indicators of a deeper movement. They reveal that the current world, while still outwardly intact, is already being dismantled from within. The spirit, sensing the inadequacy of its present forms, begins to loosen its attachment to them, creating the conditions for their eventual collapse and replacement. What emerges from this process is not merely the destruction of the old, but the birth of the new, a world that carries forward the legacy of the past while transcending its limitations. Thus, the forming spirit does not lead blindly into its new shape. It matures toward it, slowly and quietly, even as it prepares for the dramatic rupture that will mark its birth. This dual movement, of gradual development and sudden transformation defines the spirit's progression, revealing the intricate interplay between continuity and change, between the quiet nourishment of growth and the decisive leap into a new mode of being. This gradual disintegration, though quietly unfolding, often leaves the outward appearance of the whole largely intact, masking the profound shifts occurring beneath the surface. The structures and forms of the preceding world persist for a time, seemingly unaltered, even as their foundations are steadily eroded. The spirit's dismantling of its previous shape proceeds in this quiet, almost imperceptible manner, giving no immediate indication of the magnitude of the transformation underway. Yet this slow unraveling is suddenly interrupted by the emergence of a new dawn, a decisive moment when the latent forces of change converge and manifest themselves in a singular dramatic event. This moment is akin to a lightning flash in the darkness, an instantaneous illumination that reveals with startling clarity the contours of a new world. What had been hidden or only vaguely sensed in the quiet labor of disintegration now stands revealed in its fullness. The lightning does not create the new world, it merely unveils what had been forming all along, bringing to light the shape that had been quietly taking form beneath the surface of the old. In this flash, the contradictions and inadequacies of the previous world are laid bare, and the outlines of the spirit's new shape emerge with undeniable clarity.